Welcome back. Today I'm going to do something that I haven't done for a while, and that is try to analyze a subscriber game. Now this one wasn't sent in to me by one of you. It's in my archive because I played against one of you, and I'm going to try to figure out what either or both of us did wrong in this game, how we could have played better. I will say that I won the game, and I did not know that I was ahead until the last couple of moves. Maybe the last 3 or 4 moves, I became pretty certain that I was winning, but the game review chart that you can see on your screen once I switch over to the game page shows that as we transitioned from the middle game toward the end game, I gained a bigger and bigger lead, but it looks like there were a couple of peaks there where I missed an opportunity. And it also looks like just as we got into the middle game, that my opponent had a slight edge on me. These sometimes take a while because I try to understand the moves that my opponent made. I try to guess what I should have played. I'm going to switch to the analysis tab here, and I am going to turn off the lines and the feedback. And I'm just going to, that's something that I can't do on the other site, is turn off the lines and not know what I should have played. But fortunately, this was played on chess.com, so I can turn off the lines, the feedback. I am going to have the eval bar on the left, so when it jumps one way or another, I'll know that that was an important spot that I should check. I opened with e4, and my opponent played the Scandinavian defense, which I used to play a lot as black before I decided on the Caro-Kann defense. I took the pawn, my opponent took the pawn, and I brought my knight out. I don't know. I think knight to c3 and knight to f3 are both about equal there when I've checked these before. That I hadn't seen before when I've played against the Scandinavian, this moving the queen back here to check. I have seen the queen moving to a5, I've seen the queen going all the way back, and I've seen the queen parking itself one square back on d6. But the check I hadn't seen before, so I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to block it with the bishop or with one of the knights or with the queen. I obviously can't move my king out of check. To me, the two choices were to block with the bishop or the queen. And the reason I chose the queen, which the game review says was an inaccuracy, is because I figured if they took, I would take with either the knight or the bishop, and that would help me develop a piece, whereas my opponent hasn't developed any pieces yet. Now here they chose to develop a piece, which was the knight. And I don't know if it was the best move or not, but I decided to just get rid of this tension immediately. I know that that would help them develop another piece, and then black would be very slightly ahead on development. And they would be ready to castle queenside. But I also didn't want to leave those two pieces just staring at each other for very long. And again, can't develop my light squared bishop with a piece in the way, so maybe I should have blocked with the bishop. But anyway, we're about even. I took the queen, and my opponent, I'm pretty sure, smartly took back with their bishop rather than the f-pawn. Now here I saw an opportunity to develop a piece while also, I guess, gaining a tempo, not a full tempo, because pinning this knight doesn't require my opponent to do anything, but if they don't move the bishop back to protect the knight and I take it, that's going to damage these pawns, and they'll have this isolated pawn island here. I kind of thought that my opponent was going to slide that light squared bishop back, but instead they castled queenside, which shows the eval bar rising very slightly, but it's not that big of a problem. I went ahead and did what I thought I would do if they didn't protect with the light squared bishop, which is to take there. And as I said, that requires the doubling of the pawns here. It opens the king a little bit over here. Now I can't go check because I don't have a light squared bishop anymore or a queen, but their king's not as safe as it could have been, I guess. Or maybe it is, I don't know. The analysis bar seems to think it's fairly safe. I've still got 2 pieces that haven't developed. My king isn't safe yet, so I moved my d-pawn to get my dark squared bishop out. And I don't know what my opponent should have done here, but the game review says that this was a mistake, or sorry, an inaccuracy. I suppose the reason my opponent did it was to keep me from putting my dark squared bishop there. I don't know that that's where I was going to put it. I was probably going to put it here on e2. I'm guessing that's what my plan was because they have a pawn over here that they would have to move their king over to defend. Plus, putting my bishop in front of my king would allow me to castle queenside and just offer general protection. But I didn't do that. So I'm not sure now why did I play d3 if I wasn't going to get the dark squared bishop out. My next move is inaccurate, and I can see why. That doesn't do anything. In fact, it takes away the development square for my knight. So yeah, I have no idea why I played f3. I can't explain that. But the analysis bar says, or sorry, the evaluation bar says that we're very close to even here. Right at 0 as a matter of fact. That seems to be a normal developing move for my opponent. I think probably what they should have played on the previous turn instead of h6 was maybe g6, so they could get their dark squared bishop out behind it on the g file there on g7, since their light squared bishop is blocking in their e-pawn, so they couldn't move that immediately to get their dark squared bishop out that way. But this move, perfect, I understand it. Oh, and now I played what I thought I was going to play the previous turn, which is bishop to e3. Yeah, I'm still a little confused as to my f3 move there. I don't understand that. The f-pawn in its original square would have served to protect the bishop on e3, but now the bishop's just sitting there. My opponent's next move is entirely predictable, which is putting the knight here, since I am not protecting my bishop. And if I take their knight with my knight, then they undouble their pawns. And if I don't, I have to move something to protect my bishop, right? So they did that, which probably was smart, although the eval bar has risen just a little bit in my favor. I don't know if it was best for me to take it, but they didn't undouble their pawns, which I thought they were going to. I'm curious about that. The eval bar didn't jump, but surely this has got to be their best move. I was incorrect. It was best to take with the rook. In fact, taking with the c-pawn is their third best move, and probably might have been counted as an inaccuracy. I'm really surprised by that, but I'm going to turn the lines back off. Okay. They had 3 ways to take back. I just assumed they would take back with the c-pawn to undouble pawns, but maybe it doesn't matter. Now here I did think about taking this undefended pawn. However, I know a lot of times if you use a bishop to take one of those pawns on the A file or the H file that's way back there, you can get trapped. Now here, they don't have the B pawn anymore that could have moved up to trap my bishop, but it looks like if I took, they could move this front C pawn up, and then my bishop can't come back, at least not immediately, and their king could step up here and threaten my bishop, and I might lose it, so I did not do that. But I did think it was time to get the other knight out, so I did, and now I can castle either way, and we're still very close to even. Now here my opponent played what looks like a great move, which is to drop that bishop back, I assume to get out of the way of their e-pawn so they can get out their dark squared bishop. Now my next move is counted as inaccurate by the game review, but I thought it was a good move, which is to challenge that rook. Since they didn't bring the rook back before they dropped the bishop back, now the rook can't go back very far. And it can't come forward. Oh wait, yes it can. It can take that pawn. That's why that was inaccurate. I just left a pawn undefended. Oh my goodness. Did they take it? Yeah, okay. Well, that makes sense. That was probably their best move based on the eval bar not jumping. Yeah, I left the d pawn undefended. Okay. Well, good job to my opponent for seeing that I just abandoned that pawn, and now what can I do about it? Suppose I could bring the knight out to threaten the rook or hide my king. Did I hide my king? I did, and the eval bar is still very, very close to even, although now it's slightly, very slightly in black's favor. As we said on the previous turn, my opponent was probably about to move their e-pawn. They did to get out the dark squared bishop, so their other rook can join the game. My next move I can explain. It's because I have a dark squared bishop, and that's patrolling all these dark squares. And so I wanted my pawns on light squares as much as possible. So that's why I did that. But the game review said that's inaccurate. And my opponent has 0.4 advantage here, minus 0.4. But I'm not sure why that's so bad. I'm also not sure about my opponent's next move. I thought they were going to get out the dark squared bishop after moving that pawn, but instead they moved the light squared bishop. That took away a little bit of their advantage. It seems like a wasted move to me, but maybe their thinking was that they really wanted to bring this rook back now. And of course, I knew here that I was down a pawn, and so I was a little worried about my situation. I thought my opponent's major weakness was probably their king being kind of over here, and also the fact that all my pieces are active, whereas they still have this bishop on the back rank. But I'm down a pawn, and maybe my only advantage is that we both have so many pawns left, and I have a knight, whereas they have a bishop. This bishop's not going to be able to get very far here or here, because almost all my pawns are on light squares. But the game review says my opponent has a very slight advantage, and that may be because of the missing pawn that they just took. I decided to get rid of their rook, which is apparently okay because the eval bar didn't jump. Also, I was castling here by hand since I had ended up having to move my king there to protect my bishop earlier after losing the d-pawn. I don't know if my opponent should have taken, but they did. The eval bar didn't jump, so I'm guessing that was a good move, and of course I took back. And now I have temporary control over the d-file. My opponent finally did get out their dark squared bishop, and I assume that's a good square for it. It's pointing between these pawns. It's preventing me from doing certain things. And again, this pawn is still free, but again, it looks like they can trap my bishop in there if I do that. So I didn't do that. I went ahead and put my last pawn that wasn't on a light square, effectively rendering their light squared bishop useless. It can go around and help defend their pawns, but it can't get through mine. My opponent threw a pawn forward. Eval is still very close to even with black having a slight advantage. I didn't like where that bishop was sitting, so I decided to kind of reroute my knight over here to push that bishop back a little bit. I don't know if that was good. It looks like it was. My opponent played c5. That was counted as inaccurate, and it pushes the very slight advantage back into my camp. Now, one thing that does, of course, is prevent my bishop from ever hitting that pawn, but I think it also prevents their bishop from getting away. Did I go ahead with my plan of chasing their dark squared bishop? I did. I suppose now they can just drop it back here, continuing to defend their front c-pawn and getting out of danger. I don't know if that was their best move, and I'm curious as to what Stockfish would say here, but I'm gonna look since it's my opponent's turn. Oh, they played their best move. Okay. They brought their rook over here because my rook's undefended, so I can't take their bishop right now. So that was very good on their part. Did I move to defend the knight? I did with my king. But now my king is doing a lot of work here, defending both of these pieces. And actually, the king is defending all three pieces because none of them are defending each other. So they're maybe not as coordinated as they could have been. But now that my rook is protected, I assume that my opponent saw this coming, so they moved their bishop to a3. That looks like it helped my advantage a little bit, but that's probably what I would have done had I been in their shoes. If they had moved it the other way, I would have picked off that front pawn. So that made sense to me. But they have another undefended pawn. So maybe they should have left that there and played f6 at that point. I don't know. If they had left it there, I would have taken it. I don't know if that would have been good for me, but that's what I would have done. And then we would have had opposite colored bishops. They might have traded rooks. I don't know. Things would have got interesting. But instead, my knight wasn't only pointed at that bishop and that pawn, but it was, of course, pointed at the e-pawn as well. And now our rooks are facing each other. The computer did not like them taking my rook. I should say the game review didn't like it. The eval bar didn't move at all. It's still 0.4 here. So that must have been among their best moves, no matter what the game review thought. It is. It's among their two best moves here, and it's very close in evaluation to their best move is just to put it back, really. Okay, I don't understand that, but I do understand them taking it. They wanted to get this down to a pawn endgame. Neither one of us has an advantage here that I can tell, and of course Stockfish pretty much agrees with me. Again, I thought my only advantage would have been the fact that they had doubled pawns, but that might not matter anymore now that the heavy pieces are off the board. And it also doesn't matter when it comes to me getting a passed pawn, because that pawn, even though these two are doubled, they're still both defending both of these files, so I can't get a pawn through there. Even if I move this and they just forgot to take for some reason, I still have to face the next one. So I've got my work cut out for me, in other words, to get the rest of those pawns. But the knight's going to be a little bit better for hopping through those pawns than the bishops. At least that was my idea here. Again, I didn't know I was ahead, but I thought I at least had this. This knight's going to be able to threaten that pawn, and if that pawn moves forward, it's got a lot of places it can go jumping around through those pawns, whereas, as I already mentioned, their light squared bishop cannot really get through what I've got down here. They didn't like my knight sitting where it was, so they moved the f-pawn, pushing it forward, which they probably should have, again, as I said, moved the f-pawn earlier to protect their e-pawn. I came back here. I'm going to get one of those pawns, I'm pretty sure. And here, my opponent played what the game review called a great move, and I'm guessing that it is. Seeing that I'm going to win another pawn, which I've already gotten the one free pawn, their e-pawn, so now they don't have the lead anymore on material. I'm about to get a very slight lead in material here. They saw that. They also must have seen that the light squared bishop wasn't going anywhere through my pawns, as we've mentioned a couple of times, so they traded it for my knight. I would agree that that is a great move. I don't know that it was their only move in that position, but it gets rid of their disadvantage, and it gets rid of my knight, which I was thinking of as my only advantage at this point. I don't know that it matters which pawn I take back with. I took back with my h-pawn. I have a very slight lead, and it seems like it's time to start bringing our kings, because we're going to need our kings to get rid of those pawns. So my opponent brought their king. I brought my king, both of us sticking to light squares, which makes sense given that the bishops are on dark squares. And of course, that one's a dark square, but I can't do anything about it. They're adding a protector to that pawn, which is keeping me from getting to the other pawn. My next move was counted as inaccurate here. What I played was f4. I'm trying to think what I should have played instead. Now, I do remember considering that I should have played g3 first and then f4. But in my evaluation during the game, I couldn't tell which one was better. The idea, of course, of putting the g-pawn there first and then playing f4 is that if they took, I could undouble these g-pawns, but it wouldn't matter because they still had both of those, is what I thought. I also thought if they took here, I can take with my bishop, they'll be in check, and then when they get out of check, I would pick off their h-pawn. Another thing in favor of playing the f-pawn first, I thought, is that if I moved the g-pawn first, they get another move with their king. And I didn't know where they were going to put it. I thought they might put it here. And then if I played the f-pawn, they might put it here. And then I would have to move to protect my bishop one way or another. So that's why I played the f pawn first, but I'm now going to look at the lines and see, should I play the g pawn first? Should I have done something else like continue bringing my king? Okay, bringing my king is one of my top moves, king to d3. But the other two top moves are bishop to f2 and bishop to g1. I suppose either one of those could be an attempt to get onto the other diagonal safely to check their king, but what would be the point of those? Okay, so that was an inaccuracy, but the evaluation didn't drop that much. Now my opponent's next move was counted as a mistake. The lines here say my opponent should have played c6 or a6 or king to e6. And there might be other moves that have similar numbers to those evaluations, but I'm not sure what any of those would do. c6 just looks like it butts up against the back of their other c-pawn, so it almost seems like it would be a wasted move. a6, what does a6 do? I'm really not sure. And this is the point of the game where I guess both my opponent and I were trying to do a lot of calculation how to get a pawn past the opponent's pawns. And I had my plan here. I assume it would have been bad for them to take this pawn. That's why I felt no problem pushing it forward. If they took it, I was going to take back with check and then pick off their h-pawn. And I was getting really close to having a passed pawn over here, because then I could move the next one forward and I would take that, when they took, I would take back. And my last g-pawn here would be a passed pawn. So I assume that would have been bad, but I want to know, if they had taken, yeah, that would have been bad. Because I would have taken with check, and when they moved out of check, I would have taken that pawn. Okay. But what my opponent played instead that was counted as inaccurate by the game review was a5. Sorry, not inaccurate, but as a mistake. Oh, that's even worse than taking here. Really? Okay, see, I had no idea, and I left the lines on, so I know that what I played was messed up. But why is that bad? It looks like they're trying to come through here. I guess they can't come through here? Yeah, if they push that again, then I get a passed pawn over here. And I get a route to come after their bishop. Maybe that's why they needed to slow roll that a-pawn. Well, I'll be honest, the reason that I played g3 on the next move, which was counted as a miss, and I'm not sure why it counted as a miss, because there's not like one good move that I have to make here according to these lines. Stockfish suggests f5, which I'm not sure about. It would lock that pawn in place. It suggests king to d3 or king to c3. I think king to c3 would immediately run into bishop to b4 check. And then it says, then I would move to d3. So I don't know why king to c3 is up there. But I do get king to d3. We want to get our kings closer. This bishop is no danger at all to any of these pawns. What I wanted my opponent to do, as I mentioned, was to take here, and I still wanted them to. So that's why I played g3 on my next turn. But I don't know why f5 is so bad. I mean, it's so good for me. It looks like it locks that up. I don't want it locked. I want to get a pawn passed. That's why I played this, to give them another chance to take here. But that said, that missed whatever opportunity I had to play one of those three moves. Regardless, my opponent played one of their better moves here, which was c6. Okay, where did I go ahead then? Because according to this, we're still very close to even. But the graph over there showed me climbing, but I don't see the climbing yet. I played the move listed as the top as my best move, and they have a bunch of moves that keep it at point 4 here. They can play bishop to b4. They can play king to d7, really backing up. I don't know why they would want to back up here. It looks like I can come in. That's where I'm headed, by the way. They can also play king to e7. Yes, the engine wants them to back up. It also wants me to back up. It wants me to back up with my bishop and my king. Those are the next moves listed for me, king to e2 or bishop to d2. Well, I get bishop to d2. That's a good move, right? But I think I was kind of headed here because I saw my opportunity as being over on the king side, on the right, where our kings started off. My opponent, I don't know if they saw me coming for this pawn or if they just noticed I had left here and so they thought I can come in here now because that square is safe. So that's what they did. And that gave me plus 2.5, but I missed this one too. This is my second miss. I should have done the thing it said last time, which is if they put, if I'd put the bishop there though, they would have, they gave me the pawn here. That's why bishop to d2 is good. I'm pretty sure because that pawn's mine now. But what is, okay, and king to e4 is my plan, the thing I was working on that I just mentioned. That's my second best move. And taking here is also plus 2. Well, I didn't see how that would help at all. Again, if they took me, I was pretty sure I could get a passed pawn. But if I take them, not only do I have tripled pawns, I assume they would take back, and then my remaining 2 pawns would just be stuck there. But they would also be preventing their other remaining pawn from going anywhere, so I can't explain my next move. It seems to me what I should have played here was king to e4. That is one of my best moves, and it also matches with what I said about on the previous turn, my plan of getting the king over there. But what was I worried about over here? Maybe what I was worried about is that now their bishop's guarding that pawn, so what was my point? But my point could have been to get the h-pawn. That's just 1, 2, 3 turns, and I'm next to their h-pawn, which they can't move. If they move it, I'm passing. Yeah, I should have gone forward here, and that seems obvious to me, but I don't know why this is so bad. This takes us back to even. They have to go back to where they were, but they didn't. Okay, is that where they messed up and gave me the lead for good? Yeah, they have to go back where they were. I knew that. And their second best move is to take here. But that's a mistake. And it's not because I can take it. I didn't take it because that would have not only undoubled their pawns, but it would have given them the first passed pawn of this game. Now I finally did what I was supposed to do, which is drop back here, because that a-pawn isn't going anywhere. But again, I didn't know I was ahead. Stockfish says I'm up plus 2.5 now. But I guess that's enough to put me up that much, is that I get their a-pawn. Okay, now they need to take here, and then I would have to take back, I assume. And then they would play h5, and then I would take that. Probably. That's that top line there. But my opponent decided to try to get these pawns from behind with their bishop. Since I declined to take it, I'm pretty sure it would have been bad to take it. So they jumped in here. I don't think that's bad. It looks like they're going for this. But now I'm up plus 2 either way, whether I take this pawn now, or wait because it can't go anywhere, take this pawn, or just play king to d3. Now, earlier I said I didn't want to take this pawn because of the thing I explained, but now I thought, well, I can't stop them from taking the one at the back. Once they do, then the front one's done, so I might as well get rid of the front one now. That's why I decided now to go ahead and take there and triple my pawns and allow them to take back. It doesn't matter that much whether they take with the f-pawn or the h-pawn. They chose the f-pawn. I've been told so many times it's better to take inward that I think I would have taken with the h-pawn, but it doesn't look like it was that much worse. And now, of course, I can take their a-pawn, which gives me a passer on that side. So now I'm the only one with a passed pawn. What can they do about it? The engine says to come back here. I don't know what that does. Their second best move is to take my g-pawn, but my g-pawn can't go anywhere. It's pointless. I don't know why the engine or my opponent would want to take that g-pawn. I think if I were my opponent, I would try to get this bishop back around here somehow. You know what I'm saying? Just to stop the advance of this pawn. Because I'm going to have to move my bishop at some point to get this pawn passed. So if they could get their bishop here waiting to go around, I don't know, or maybe try to bring the king around. But their only king move that's listed in the top 3 is king to e6. Oh, I guess to come after these pawns? Well, then why wouldn't they go to king to e5 then? Because they can't go here or here due to my pawns. They have to go this way to get to my pawns. Unless they okay, wow, it took me a while. If they take this now, then their king can go this way to get to the front pawn. That makes sense. Okay, so they took the rear pawn, which makes their king's path to the other one much easier, and I'm supposed to bring my king. Or push the a-pawn. Well, pushing the a-pawn seemed like a priority to me. It's my passed pawn. It's my only asset. And again, I thought I might be up just a little bit here, but I had no idea it was plus 3.5. I thought they could stop it. Whether it was the king coming around or their king just moving once and then their bishop coming around, I thought they could stop this pawn. My idea, which I got from the Jeremy Silman Endgames book, which I haven't finished, by the way. I've only done the first section that's for beginners and early intermediate players, and then after that it gets harder and harder, and I haven't been able to get past it. But anyway, in the Jeremy Silman Endgame book, it talked about if you have passed pawns that are distant enough apart from each other, I don't remember if there was a minimum, but the farther apart they are, the better if you just have kings left. And now here we have bishops left, which are long distance pieces, so that makes it another story. But my thinking was, I've got a pawn over on the G file, and I've got this passed pawn on the A file. So if I can get that A pawn far enough to make them worry about it, to put their king and maybe bishop over there trying to stop it, then my king can go wipe out their H and G pawns. And their stuff wouldn't be able to get back over there. That was my idea. Again, that works better if it's just kings and pawns. And it works better when your opponent doesn't have pawns on both sides too. But again, I have a passed pawn. So that's kind of what my thinking was here. So I just wanted this A pawn as far advanced as possible to cause problems for them. Also, if it's here on A4, I thought, well, because I can't move my bishop there, right? Because their king would take it. And I can't move my bishop here or here. So I thought I could just move my bishop 1. And then if they come to threaten it somehow, I can put my pawn up here to defend my bishop. Then my bishop can hide behind, my pawn can hide behind my bishop, and then go one forward where the bishop's protecting it. They did play king to d7 at this point, and here is, I assumed that they were thinking what I was thinking a couple of turns ago. They need to go around there and stop that pawn. I did what I said, which is push the bishop forward one so I could get the pawn up here behind it. What my opponent was supposed to do here was get their bishop back, now that their king's out of the way. Okay, see, I thought they were bringing their king around to take care of that problem. But it says, no, you've got to take care of that problem with the bishop. Bishop to b8, or no, king to c8's their second move. Okay, that's what I thought they were going to do. Or bishop to d6. I don't know what that does. Oh, it protects this pawn. Maybe they were worried about me knocking out that pawn. That must have been what explains this move. Okay, they were worried about here, but now Stockfish was saying that they had to go there to protect that pawn if that's what they were worried about. Because now their bishop can't get over here without first going back to the other diagonal. a5 is my best move here, and it had been my plan for some time. Again, still don't know I'm up plus 4.5, almost plus 5, because I have trouble calculating beyond a couple of moves. What if they go here? I push my pawn, but then they come over. Then I push my pawn, then they get in front of it. That's all I could think right here. Is like, I don't think I can get through there yet. Now, I did know if I pushed the pawn forward that all of these squares would be unavailable to their king. But I also wasn't sure if I was ready to do that, because what if I pushed this pawn forward and then they somehow got their bishop back in here and forced a trade? Then my pawn's unprotected. The computer says their best moves are bishop to d4, bishop to g3, or king to c8, and they're all about the same evaluation. The only ones of those I get are the king move and bishop to g3. I'm not sure what bishop to d4 would do, but Stockfish seems to think it doesn't matter. They did bring their king around, which is what I thought they were going to do. Oh, and I should have pushed the a-pawn now. Okay, I wasn't sure about that. Again, I thought, what if I did that, then the bishop's not protected anymore, and then they could do this and force a bishop trade, and then the pawn's alone. So here I did not play my, that's the only move for me to maintain the plus 4.8, is pushing the a-pawn. Or I could have, what? Oh, I could have played b4 because that pawn's pinned. But what if I played b4? They took. I took their bishop. They have a passed pawn. Oh, but I can stop that passed pawn with my king. Okay, I do get pawn to b4 because that pawn can't move. Okay, didn't see that. I played my third best move. And it's the thing I was talking about earlier, because their king has committed itself. For a second, we saw it kind of come this way. I thought maybe it was going to try to go around and help the bishop get rid of my right side pawns. But now it's committed itself to going around here to try to stop the a-pawn. And while it's busy doing that, I thought I can just go right over here and get that one, their h-pawn. So that's why I played king to d3. But that got rid of most of my advantage. Now Stockfish says, since you went through all the trouble of bringing your king over here, keep going. Just keep going. And then that's all stopped over here. But they didn't. And they didn't play their second best move, which was bishop to g3 again, because again, the bishop can come around here and help. One of those or bishop to g3. But they played bishop to d4. Okay, so that's where they lost, I think, and never gained back any advantage, because that didn't at all prevent what I'm doing on the left, and it didn't at all prevent my plans on the right. Again, Stockfish says a6 is my best move and b4 is second because that pawn is still pinned. Okay, well, I went ahead with my plan, and sometimes at my level, that's best. If you have a plan, it may not be a foolproof plan, but if it's a fairly solid plan, sometimes it's better to keep going with it because you at least understand it. And I don't necessarily mean that as advice to anyone. It's just something that I'm explaining my own activities by saying that as a statement. For me, sometimes it's better to go with the plan that I had because at least I know what that plan is doing. I suppose it may not be the best plan to keep going over here because they could get there. I don't know. But when I did that, they are supposed to again play king to b7, king to b8. Now, king to b7 is the only move here that maintains +3. It says king to d7 is also available, but if they played that, they can't catch me, right? Yeah, I'm still going to get to their h-pawn first, but they played h5. Now here I had to do some really quick calculations because if I took, I noticed some things about the following situation. Their bishop is guarding the promotion square that I need, and it's protecting the promotion square that their g-pawn needs. And I was pretty proud of myself for noticing that. However, I thought if I take and they come forward, I can get that pawn. The only way they can protect their g-pawn is to keep it on a dark square. So yeah, it was by far my best move to take, but I knew I would have to be very careful again because of the bishop guarding my promotion square and their promotion square. Even though they're on two different files, their bishop is guarding the two necessary squares. My bishop's not guarding anything except the a-pawn. But now that I've taken, it's +8. It went to +7 or +8 when they first moved their H-pawn. But again, they have to play B7, king to B7 to stop, I guess, the possible advance of my A-pawn. If they play G4, it definitely says my king should go to F4, which is what I was prepared to do. But they played their third best move, which was king to D7. I guess they started seeing that there was a problem over here. Or maybe they didn't see that their bishop was guarding my promotion square. And that's why they started bringing their king. I have a few different moves that work for me. One is A6. Since they didn't go there to stop that, I can push A6 now. Or I can move my king closer toward their pawn that I need to capture, which I did. I'm surprised Stockfish says their best move is to push it forward because I would just take it. But their second best move I understand, which is to go back that way, and that's what my opponent played. A6 is again my best move, because once I play it, their king cannot access any of those squares. H6 is also listed, but again, I wasn't ready to push that pawn until I could make sure that nothing was guarding that square. So I took their g-pawn, and the reason I chose that is because now I don't ever have to worry about it. Their other two pawns aren't going anywhere. Their bishop can't take off my B and C pawns that are blocking their pawns because they're on light squares and their bishop's on a dark square. And by the time their king got around there to hit the back end of my pawns, I've got passed pawns on the two rook files, A and H, and their king can only stop one of them. And their bishop can only stop one of them. So I thought I was doing pretty well here. And instead of checking me or coming toward the bishop to try to stop my A pawn, they repeated moves with their king. And again, I should have played A6. That's okay, I played G6. My idea here, of course, was to keep them from getting any closer to this pawn. I wanted this pawn to get down here to H7 for whenever their bishop left that spot or left that diagonal. Or I thought, if I put my king here and then promoted and they had to sacrifice their bishop for it, I would take their bishop. And then I could use my king to solve this problem over here on the other side. Because their king can't get through here because my pawn's guarding that square. The only way their king alone could get rid of these pawns is to come all the way around like so. So I knew I was ahead for sure. And I guess my opponent decided to start coming toward my rear pawns, which is why they did that. But now I calculated they can't get back here in time because that square's off limits. So to get to A8, they just can't do it. So when I played A6 here, finally, my opponent resigned. But yeah, I wasn't sure I was ahead until even after that. No, I wasn't sure I was ahead there. Even after I took it, I just knew I was going to have to be careful. I knew I could stop their pawn with my king, but I knew that they could stop my pawn. So I wasn't sure I was ahead just yet. I think where I decided that I knew for sure that I was ahead, sorry, those colors stay there unless you erase them when you go back to spots you've already been before. Still not sure. I became more comfortable here, but I wasn't sure I was winning. Again, their bishop's guarding the promotion square. I think it was here when I realized when they repeated, and I thought they don't know what to do, and they can't stop my A pawn. And I began to guess that I was ahead, but again, I was thinking it was, maybe it was like +2 or something, not +30. But when they went forward, yeah, I knew for sure. Okay, so I want to say good job to this opponent. I have played Vedant Baj before. We've had some really interesting games. This one was really tight until, yeah, all the way up here where it moved 27 and we're very close to even. And I didn't take advantage of their first mistake. It's still less than +1 here. Yeah, so Vedant Baj gave me a run for my money. I'm still not great at evaluating the positions on the board during games. So again, I didn't know I was ahead until it was really late in the game. I'm glad that I won. Hopefully Vedant Baj learned something from this analysis or even their own analysis before this video came out. And I think I learned something too, just from going through this analysis. There were a couple of places that I wasn't sure what the point was, but then looking around the board or looking at consequences through the Stockfish lines, I think I got some stuff. Hopefully you're getting better at chess as well. I do appreciate you spending your time here, and I'll see you next time.